Hello, in this broadcast, the information program time. Today in Moscow, the Security Council of the Russian Federation held a session which was of a regularly scheduled nature, TASS was told by a source in the Kremlin. Today's meeting of the Security Council was chaired by the President. The agenda consisted of 3 items. The first is the condition of our battle against crime and immediate measures to provide security for citizens, as reported by Yelin, Stepashin, and Ilyushenko. The second question is the progress in facilitating the defense capability of Russia in 1994, and briefly objectives for 1995 reported by the Minister of Defense, Gorbachev. And the third issue is informative on the preparations and realization of the agreement on all-encompassing ban on nuclear testing. Despite expectations, the mayor of Moscow, Yuri Lushkov, wasn't present at the Security Council meeting, nor were the chairman of both chambers of parliament, Vladimir Shumeka and Ivan Rybkin. The Security Council stated that despite several reviews of the issue of the battle against crime by highest organs of state rule, not even the slightest breakthrough has been achieved in this area. Such a situation, as indicated in the announcement of the press service of the President after the conclusion of the meeting, discredits state power, generates mistrust toward the government, and threatens the national security of Russia. At the session, it was noted that the impunity of criminals, the absence of notable results in investigations, indicates serious shortcomings in the performance of organs of power, and primarily law enforcement, internal affairs organs, prosecutorial and counterintelligence bodies. An especially alarming situation is developing in Moscow because of insufficient and tardy finances. The execution of the federal program to tighten the battle with crime is placed under the threat of derangement. Boris Yeltsin, his press service emphasizes, issued concrete instructions for the coordination and consecutive realization of planned measures for the strict execution and priority financing of a program to toughen the battle against crime. Today, officially dismissed from their posts are the prosecutor of Moscow, Gennady Ponomaryov, and the head of the capital's Central Department of the Internal Affairs, Vladimir Pankratov. The reaction to these dismissals in the reports of our correspondents. The clock in the office of the prosecutor of Moscow, Gennady Ponomaryov, as of today, Monday, are ticking away a new countdown. The 49-year-old Gennady Ponomaryov, who graduated from the law faculty of the Moscow State University, occupied this post since 1989. Today at 12 o'clock, I was invited to attend the Prosecutor General's office and was acquainted with the decree. I would like to, perhaps, I won't confirm that, perhaps I would like to appeal to the conscience, if you will, of those who are employed in the board of the Prosecutor General's office. I don't anticipate any change in that decision. I will leave the office of the public prosecutor. Gennady Ponomaryov doesn't know what he'll be occupied with in the future, but now it's clear more time he'll devote to his favorite involvement in theater and family. To the question, did he tell his wife, Tatiana Vladimirovna, about what happened, he said, "I didn't phone her, perhaps she phoned me." In the afternoon, one more head rolled, this time the head of the main department of internal affairs of the capital, Vladimir Pankratov, was dismissed. Vladimir Pankratov was appointed to the post of the head of the city internal affairs of Moscow in November of '92. Meanwhile, the mayor of Moscow, Yuri Lushkov, said on Saturday to the press that he expressed his objection to the president to the intention to dismiss Ponomaryov and Pankratov. We are people of understanding, and here there will be no delays in how we must act, or perhaps delays in how we should react to the situation. I promise you. And yet at this hour, any reaction on the part of Yuri Lushkov to the dismissals is not known to us. At the same time, appointed today as the acting prosecutor of Moscow to replace the dismissed Gennady Ponomaryov was his first deputy, Sergei Gerasimov. This, a correspondent of RIA News, was told in the office of the public prosecutor of Moscow. However, as is known, the majority of employees of the public prosecutor feel the decision to remove Ponomaryov from his post to be mistaken. Today, not accepting congratulations from fellow employees, Gerasimov Gerasimov began to fulfill his new responsibilities. Just now, our correspondent, Lana Gorbanova, returned from the Office of the Public Prosecutor of Russia. The murder of Vlad Listyev will, in the near future, be exploited by several people to achieve their own political aims, possible political shufflings, regroupings, etc. Is the dismissal of the Prosecutor General of Moscow one of such actions? And is this a settling of accounts? I must say one thing. On the 4th of March, on Saturday, the board of the prosecutor's office met to examine precisely this matter, considering the fact that public opinion is very serious and precise in this regard. I gave each person on the board a chance to speak, and each member of the board spoke and expressed an opinion, and having in hand figures and facts, etc., the decision of the panel to dismiss Ponomarev from his post as prosecutor of Moscow was adopted unanimously. I assure you that it does not happen frequently this way, but I'd like to say that everything shouldn't be reduced, as it often happens in our country, to some personal conflicts or personal issues. At the board, there were statements made by members that, in general, for such omissions and negligence, Ponomarev should have been fired in July upon the results of the preceding inquiry. At that time, 2 of his deputies were dismissed, as you remember. And today, or as of today, on the 4th, if we had done all of that at that time, it was said, we could have corrected the situation in Moscow. Again, in connection with the murder of Vlad Listyev, often here, it is said that now a very serious attempt is being made to create a rift between the federal and regional bodies of power. It's not time to begin to divide power now, in my opinion, and I would be very satisfied if the public prosecutor of Moscow would be a person who would not be of a placating type, but a person who would make phone calls, make demands, and would make persistent requests for whatever the office lacks. I had asked my deputy and the panel members the question, did any of you, during the course of the year, receive any requests or demands from the prosecutor of Moscow regarding the investigative apparatus or other matters? And the answer was negative, unfortunately. In your view, who could be the successor in the post of public prosecutor of Moscow? This question was also examined by the board, and today we are holding consultations. In my view, and in the board's view, today the office of the public prosecutor of Moscow must be headed by a person, I've already said, with colossal experience. And we have, and I'm prepared today to suggest this candidacy in view of the board's decision. He is the Deputy Prosecutor General in Investigations, Oleg Ivanovich Kaidanov. During the course of many years, he worked in Uzbekistan during that same period when there were these high-profile occurrences with the Deputy Prosecutor of the Republic. At that time, in principle, all these loud affairs connected with the secretaries of the Central Committee. And these were matters which he was involved in specifically as the Deputy Prosecutor of the Republic. Appointed today as temporary acting head of the City Internal Affairs Department of Moscow is the first deputy of the head of the Department on Criminal Militia, Major General Nikolai Kulikov. This was stated by a high-placed Ministry of Internal Affairs official. According to him, the order was signed by Viktor Yerin, Minister of Internal Affairs. Interfox's interlocutor said that Vladimir Pankratov was only removed from his post and he will remain within the staff of the Internal Affairs and his fate will be decided there. The deputy head of the City Internal Affairs of Moscow, Major General Viktor Kisilov, feels that in the best scenario, law enforcement organs will manage to detain only the executioners and not those who ordered the murder of Vladislav Listyev, Kisilov told Interfox today. According to him, probably we will only find the small fry, and those who ordered the murder, as usually happens, will slip by the wayside. He also emphasized that the operational and investigative team created by Moscow law enforcement organs during the night and day incessantly are in search for the murderers of Vladislav Listyev. Another announcement is less optimistic. There are almost no chances to solve the murder of Vladislav Listyev. This was stated by the Deputy Prosecutor of Moscow, Yuri Sineshikov. In an interview to Interfox, he said that if similar crimes, which are thoroughly and premeditated thoroughly prepared and premeditated, are not solved within 10 days, subsequently, it's impossible to solve them. According to Sinishikov, the murder of Listyev is among the relatively new types of crimes, those for hire, in which domestic law enforcement organs have not yet accumulated enough experience, and in essence, they have to train while working with each case. An award of 100 million rubles was established for the solving of the murder of Vladislav Listyev by the operational investigative team leading this investigation. This decision was adopted by the International Humanitarian Fund of Law Enforcement Organs, the Russian, whose official announcement our television agency received today. The Union of Journalists of Russia and the Committee in Defense of Freedom of Speech and Journalists' Rights called today on all the sources of Russian mass media to participate in an action in memory of Vladislav Listyev. They suggest that to be included daily in newspapers and also on television screens, a portrait of Vlad showing how many days ago he was murdered. The action, according to the organizers, is planned to be continued until such time that we can say that the public has drawn conclusions from the crime and has done everything to prevent an occurrence. The operation to clear the capital of Chechnya of unlawful armed formations has been completed. Today, subdivisions of the internal forces and the Ministry of Internal Affairs took control of the last stronghold of the Dudaev gunmen, the micro-region of Grozny-Chernarechye. Administrative buildings and residential homes were not damaged, TASS reports. During the operation, 3 stockpiles with ammunition were seized, large quantity of weapons and combat technology confiscated as a result of the actions of the federal forces who took control of the roads leading to Grozny and also are in charge of clearing the micro-region Chernarechye. The government of National Rebirth of Chechnya has begun to successfully implement measures in helping return refugees to Grozny who are temporarily in the populated point Urus-Martan. The federal forces continue their operation to free the territory of Chechnya of unlawful armed formations. Tanks and subdivisions numbering approximately 100 vehicles have now approached the second largest Chechen city, Gudermes, and are firing at the positions where gunmen have entrenched themselves. With brief intervals, artillery firing at positions of Chechen formation continues near the village Samashka, Achkoy Martan, and Bamut. Shooting continues as well in Grozny. The search and confiscation of weapons among the population continues. This function has been assumed by the internal forces, OMON, and border troops. Their posts and outposts have been established along the entire administrative border of Chechnya. Field engineering units have begun to clear buildings of mines and neutralizing explosive objects on the streets of Grozny. In the city already, 6 commandant's offices are functioning. Fulfilling their responsibilities are the Republican administration and the city mayor's department. The Tajik opposition has announced an extension of the ceasefire in the Republic by another 50 days. As Tehran Radio reported today, the deputy leader of the movement, the Islamic Rebirth of Tajikistan, Akbar Turajan Zada, stated in Islamabad that the opposition is prepared to adhere to the temporary ceasefire agreement in order to give the UN an opportunity to hold another round of inter-Tajik talks. In the end of March, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, intends to take a brief vacation. This, a correspondent of TASS learned today from well-informed sources within the Kremlin. According to these same sources, the visit of the Russian head of state to Ukraine, also planned for the second part of March, may be postponed. However, the source emphasized that this is not directly connected with the vacation of the head of state. The schedule of the visit of Boris Yeltsin to Kiev, according to him, will be defined depending on the level of ultimate readiness for the signing of an agreement on friendship and cooperation between Russia and Ukraine. Today, the preliminary results of Sunday's elections, which occurred in several regions of Russia, of representative organs of power became known. In the majority of districts of Tataria, Bashkiria, and Dagestan, the elections were recognized as having been held. Final results will be learned in a few days. Today, the heads of the governments of Russia and Hungary at talks in Moscow devoted significant attention to discussing the question of liquidating the debt of the former USSR by deliveries of goods from Russia to Hungary. This debt is 900 million American dollars. The Hungarian side reacted positively to Russia's readiness to make deliveries within the framework of repaying the debt of cargo vehicles and equipment for natural gas storage. Between Russia and Hungary, there are no political disputes. This was stated in Moscow by Viktor Chernomyrdin, opening the dialogues of the state delegations of the two countries, and added, turning to the head of the Hungarian delegation, Dual Horn, that the only problem is how to support and further what has already been achieved. I'll remind you that after certain complications in the transitional period, Hungary again is our significant business partner. Trade turnover has reached $2.7 billion a year, but as was noted, today there's an opportunity to accelerate trade, and it's natural that among the documents signed after the talks, there was an agreement on encouraging and mutually protecting capital investments. And first of all, a protocol was signed to exchange certificates and the ratification of an agreement on friendly relations and cooperation between Russia and Hungary. Dual Horn noted that through the signed documents, not only is an agreement legal basis being established, but the entire complex of documents necessary for mutual cooperation. The head of the Russian government emphasized that they have targeted the resolution of many practical issues in cooperation in transportation, energy, natural gas deliveries, foods, and goods of domestic consumption. Today, the President of Russia, through his decree, revoked all customs advantages and abolished the institution of special exporters. The aide of the President on Economic Affairs, Alexander Lifshitz, commented on the new decree, the President 3 hours after they were signed by the President. The issue is to replace the strange and impulsive structural policy when advantages or privileges are enjoyed by certain sectors and others not for some reason, or a certain company and its neighbor for some reason does not. In the appendices to the decree, all companies, without exception, are listed who enjoyed special advantages today. Together with major companies, foreign economic privileges were enjoyed by many associations of invalids and veterans. In the opinion of Alexander Lifshitz, such organizations should receive money from the budget. And the trade of beverages should be the demise of those institutions who are in that line of work. In another presidential decree, the registration by the Ministry of Foreign Economic Ties of export of strategic raw materials is cancelled. That is, the institution of special exporters is abolished. As of the 1st of January, the status of special exporter was enjoyed by more than 400 organizations. Lifshitz was asked whether he fears for his life because of the decrees, because for many it means millions of dollars in lost revenues. If this is assigned to us, we will do it. I fear or not. Sometimes I'm afraid, sometimes not. That's not important. If the decrees are functional, in Lifshitz's opinion, all entrepreneurs will be put on equal footing and inflation will be decreased to between 3 and 4% a month. Today, in trading at the Moscow Interbank Currency Exchange, the rate of the ruble fell by another 27 points and was at the rate of 4,585 rubles for $1 American dollar. Conversely, on world exchanges today, unexpectedly, the dollar fell sharply, but for the American economy, this is not quite so frightening as for Russia, the situation with the ruble. The rate of the American dollar fell to a historically record low level at the Tokyo Currency Exchange and flung the Japanese government into panic. Massive intervention by the Bank of Japan, which purchased around $1 billion, only partially adjusted the situation. The Prime Minister of Japan called on the countries of the Group of Seven to undertake coordinated efforts to support the American currency. Further devaluation of the dollar threatens a rise in prices on Japanese goods on the world market and could have a devastating effect on the entire economy of the country, oriented mostly toward export. However, local exports expressed doubt that it would be possible to support the dollar even through simultaneous investments by leading Western countries at the currency exchanges of America, Europe, and Asia, since to date they have never managed to coordinate policies in the area of currency exchange. The decline in the rate of the American dollar began after the European Union last night adopted the decision on devaluating the Spanish peseta and the Portuguese escaro in the framework of the European currency system. This led to the significant strengthening on leading world currency exchanges of the Deutsche Mark and also the weakening of the American dollar in comparison to all other foreign currencies. The official and final results of yesterday's elections for the Parliament of Estonia will be publicized in a few days. However, at this hour, we have sufficiently precise data about the distribution of political forces in Estonia. Victorious at yesterday's elections, and with a major margin, was the electoral union of the Coalition and Peasant Party of Estonia. In this union are many former directors, chairmen of collective farm scientists, ministers. The party, which is headed by the ex-premier Vahi and the former chairman of the Supreme Soviet of Estonia, and in the years of Soviet Estonia, the secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Estonia, Arnold Riedel, received 33% of the votes. The ruling party in the last 2 years of the young politicians, Isama Homeland, gathered only 7% of the votes, and this can be called a strong expression of the right forces in Estonia. Unexpectedly successful at the elections was the electoral union Nashton Estonia, representing the interests of the Russian-speaking population of the Republic, headed by the Vice Mayor of Tallinn, Viktor Andreev. As is known, persons with Estonian citizenship among local Russians are few and far between, and the right to vote belongs only to citizens. Therefore, to be elected to Parliament for a Russian-speaking candidate was not a very simple objective. But they've successfully managed and will now receive 6 seats in Parliament. Hence, one may say that on the political map of Estonia, a certain turn to the left or center has certainly occurred. Now, in power are the more moderate and experienced politicians. It's expected probably that relations will improve with Russia because the 2 large parties, the coalition and the centrist one, during the pre-election campaign had often spoken of their desire to activate their eastern policy and broaden trade contacts with their Russian partners. The chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shemeka, today arrived in Tel Aviv from Moscow on an official visit on the invitation of the Parliament of Israel. During the visit, they will discuss questions of two-sided relations and the situation in the region. Signing of any joint documents is not planned. The European Union will not sign a temporary agreement on trade and partnership with Russia until such time that in Chechnya an effective ceasefire is achieved. This was stated today by diplomatic sources in the Security Council of the Union, where today the regular meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the European Union was held. At the same time, the 9th of March planned visit to Moscow of the heads of the trio of the Union, representing the heads of the diplomatic departments of France, Germany and Spain, and the member of the Euro Commission, Hans van den Broek, will take place. In Copenhagen, the World Summit in the interests of social development convened. The world community is against social injustice, against unemployment and poverty on the planet. This was stated by the UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali speaking at the opening ceremony. In the forum, participating are representatives of almost all member countries of the UN. The Russian delegation is headed by the Deputy Chairman of the government, Yuri Yarov. In the national report prepared by Russia for this meeting, figures are cited that almost 60% of Russians are now living significantly worse since the city embarked on market reforms in 1992, and only 10% of the citizens have managed to improve their material situation. In the opinion of the Secretary General of the UN, participants in the meeting should develop a collective program to provide social security, facilitate social integration, and achieve social peace. The meeting should be extended until the 12th of March. On this day 50 years ago, our troops in Hungary were dealt a blow of terrible force. Hundreds of German tanks simultaneously attacked positions of the 3rd Ukrainian Front near the Lake Balaton. Our front defense line was literally crushed into the warm spring soil by the monstrous steel roller. This is how the last assault of the German forces began during the Second World War. On the eve, Hitler had formed formulated its basic objectives. The first was to not permit the adversary into the oil-rich areas of Hungary. The second, at any cost, to seize the strategic initiative in the south. And although the year 45 was approaching, the Germans were still Germans. The aggression was marvelously prepared and thoroughly planned. From Ardennes, the 6th Tank Army of the SS was redeployed, equipped with the latest models and tanks. By the 6th of March, the north of Lake Balaton, the German command managed to create a dual supremacy in tanks and self-propelled guns. By evening of the same day, a blow of unprecedented forces shook the defense of the Third Ukrainian Front. The Hitler forces advanced in a solid armored shield of 50 to 60 tanks per 1 kilometer of front. This raging steel wall, like an enormous press, squeezed our forces out of their positions. Artillery and infantry personnel of the Third Ukrainian stood to their death. The losses on both sides were calculated in the tens of thousands. After 10 days, having penetrated our defense by 30 kilometers, the Hitler forces lost their strength and ceased the advance. Those who were lucky to survive that meat grinder later compared the battle at Lake Balaton in terms of ferocity and bloodshed with the clashes on the Kursk Arch. Unfortunately, today, few know about this any longer. Usually, the year 1945 was depicted in our country as a triumphant, complete march of the Red Army through Europe to the thunder of salutes and applause, but this only belittled the great labor of our soldier. On the contrary, the closer we came to face the enemy, the more persistent and fierce its resistance. Each meter of the European landscaped soil was taken through the price of enormous sacrifice and blood, and hundreds of thousands of our troops were to pay with their lives to rid world civilization of the brutal, frenzied German fascism. 63 days remained before the end of the war. The President Boris Yeltsin signed a decree to confirm the statute of the Order of Zhukov, a provision for the Zhukov medal and the description of the latter. This was reported by the press service of the head of state today. The presentation of the Order of Zhukov and the Zhukov medal to recipients will be done by the President of Russia. The first historical rapprochement of the shuttle and Mir, which was held recently, Yelena Kondakova, who is on the Russian station, involuntarily commented, "It's a shame that we were so close and we can't come together yet." But until the meeting at the American guests on the station Mir, there's very little time left. On the 26th of October from Cape Canaveral, the Atlantis will be launched, and in 3 to 4 days later, the basic link should occur. The commander of the American crew, the STS-74, Kenneth Cameron, is confident all will be in order. However, he said at the fact that at Mir, by then, Yelena Kondakova won't be there, who, according to him, could have been a marvelous hostess at the friendly table in space. Kenneth shared these words with us in the Khrunich Center, where the crew of the STS-74 arrived for the first time to become acquainted with the model of the station Mir, and Sergei Shalevich, the director of the program Alpha, didn't miss the opportunity to tell them about his brainchild. On the Alpha station, the project of the future. Therefore, the Americans, with greater curiosity, viewed the rocket carrier Proton and, of course, thoroughly examined all the modules of Mir, with which they were well pleased, because the shuttle, according to them, is too small for a large crew. To the question, are they preparing gifts for the Russian cosmonauts, with whom they'll meet in October, Cameron said that they have for a long time been racking their brains over this. Perhaps they'll take along some ice cream or a guitar. To the proposal to take along a few bottles of vodka, he briefly hesitated and then said that they should better drink with the Russians later on Earth. And the first words which the commander will say to our fellows opening the hatch, he has already prepared. "I will say that my heart, after many years, after many months in training, is happy to finally be at the station with friends who are cosmonauts and astronauts." The current year is an anniversary year for the ancient Kyrgyzian epic Manas, a unique work which voluminously reflected all the spheres of the material spiritual life of Kyrgyzian people, will turn 1,000 years old. The festival, Manas on the Neva, will be held in Petersburg in August. Currently, its organizational committee was set up, which includes many prominent figures, among them the academic Dmitry Sergeyevich Likhachov, the writer Chingiz Aytmatov. The anniversary is celebrated under the aegis of UNESCO. We, as previously are the peoples of the former Soviet Union and express a soul spiritual expanse. And Manas is an encyclopedia of the Eurasian peoples. Its lofty spirit is penetrated with lofty strivings and ideas of unifying the people. And why was Petersburg chosen to be the venue for the festival and not Bishkek? The founders of the study of Manas and the study of the Kyrgyzstan peoples are the scientists, Russian scientists from St. Petersburg, and therefore we are obliged to hold it there. And about one more news item of a sociological nature, which is not void of interest in the advent of Women's Day: kindness, ability to manage the home and business, and beauty. These are three qualities men value in women most of all. As was learned during the survey conducted by the Fund of Public Opinion, femininity in the rating of qualities of the better half is in fourth place, intellect is in fifth, followed by sexual attractiveness, refinement, and modesty. The sense of humor and ability to communicate are in last place. On the other hand, women primarily look for a developed sense of duty and responsibility in men. For them, it's more significant than kindness or intelligence. Women esteem quite highly an ability to be practical and also refinement. They deem the sense of humor to be quite significant. Attractiveness and ability to communicate in the women's survey was 8th and 9th, and sexual attractiveness is at the bottom of the list of primary men's qualities. This was my last information, and in approximately 1 minute with the sports news, Daria Chervonenko waits you all the best. Good evening. Today in Birmingham, the World Figure Skating Championships started. It's curious that in England, such a competition is held for the first time in the last 45 years. The competitions for the World Chess Crown, Zsuzsa Polgar is in the lead today. She won another match against Majka Burdanice, and the score is 3-1 for the Hungarian woman chess player. The Russian Irina Privalova held 2 victories at the sprinting distances of 60 and 200 meters at the competitions in Zeldern-Fingen in Germany. Meanwhile, the American Michael Johnson has set a new world record in the 400-meter at the track and field tournament in Atlanta. Johnson has improved his own world record, which he set 1 month ago, by 0.34 seconds. The Russian Sergei Shevletsov, in second place in the moguls in the Norwegian Lillehammer, has become the early World Cup holder in this form of freestyle. In another world tournament, a series in the Alpine racing in Aspen, Colorado, was won by the American A.J. Kitt. It's his first big success in the current season. The defense player of the Philadelphia Flyers, Dmitry Yushkevich, opened the score against the Pittsburgh Penguins. In the third period, Yushkevich was also successful and scored 1 more goal, and the result was quite unexpected. The leader in the Eastern Conference, Pittsburgh, in the end lost 2-5. Good evening. Tomorrow in Karelia, in the Murmansk and Arkhangelsk districts, in the Republic of Komi, and in the Nenetsk Autonomous District, in the zone of atmospheric fronts, it will be cloudy weather with wet snow and patches of rain. On the coast, strong gusty winds, temperatures from 0 to +4. In the Murmansk district, in the northeast of the Nenetsk Autonomous District, and the Republic of Komi, -3 to 5. In the central and Volgovyatsk areas, in a belt of high pressure, partly cloudy skies, precipitation is unlikely. In the morning and evening, patches of fog, temperatures of +5 to 10 in the south of the central region, +12 degrees. In the Baltic countries, in the Kaliningrad district in the northwestern region, variably cloudy skies in the morning and evening hours, fog and some drizzle. During the day, +3 to 8 degrees. The weather of Belarus, the central and western parts of Ukraine, and also Moldova will be defined by an atmospheric front. In these areas, it will be cloudy with patches of rain. The temperatures from +9 to 14. In the east and southern part of Ukraine and central Chernozem area, the Rostov district, the Krasnodar, Stavropol, Rim areas, the republics of the northern Caucasus, the lower and central Volga, will be in an area of high pressure. On this broad territory, variably cloudy skies, but no precipitation. The sun will continue to heat up the ground, and the temperatures will be from +11 to 16. In Crimea, in the Krasnodar, Stavropol, Rim areas, 16 to 22 degrees. In the Chechen-Ingushetian republics in Dagestan and the lower Volga, at night +1-3, during the day +10 to 13. In the Transcaucasus, the weather will remain clear. In Georgia, Azerbaijan, +12 to 15. In Armenia, it's 2 to 3 degrees cooler. In St. Petersburg, cloudy weather with some light precipitation. At night around 0, during the day +6 to 8. In Moscow and suburbs, variably cloudy skies without precipitation. At night +1 to 3. In the morning, some fog. During the day +6 to 8. In the south of the district, up to +12 degrees. This was the forecast of the weather for the 7th of March. Goodbye.